Big time divisional matchup this week with the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts, and these teams seem to be going different directions. It's Crossover Thursday, folks.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into another edition of Locked On Titans and Locked On Colts. I'm the host of Locked On Titans, Tyler Rowland, here with one of the co-hosts of Locked On Colts, Jake Arthur. We're going to be breaking down this matchup for you guys today, talk about where these teams are at, what the biggest storyline is going into this game. We're going to talk about the matchups that will decide this game, and ultimately, what are we looking for that will determine the winner. Before we dive into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans and Locked On Colts your first listen. Also want to let you know that Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So, Jake, the Colts are 2-0. The Titans are 0-2. Looking like a great start to the year for the Colts. What's kind of the buzz in Indy right now?
Yeah, it's the unexpected is essentially everything about this team right now. You didn't expect them to be 2-0, especially with a win over the Broncos. Daniel Jones to be lighting it up. Like, there hasn't been a lot of weak points to this team so far. And so from that vantage point, you're kind of wondering, you assume this is a hot streak to start out. And it's kind of what's fact, what's fiction, like what's going to come back down to earth. Last week, we saw it a little bit with no Laiatu Latu, no Charvarius Ward on defense. You saw there was no pass rush. You saw with Xavier Howard having to be the top corner, that was going to be a problem. So the schematics and like all the strings that Lou Anarumo was able to pull in week one to really put Tua in a scrambler, that didn't all necessarily work in week two against Bo Nix and Sean Payton. Now, the defense did step up late in the game, and they kind of made the plays when they had to. They got a late interception. You know, they finally put some pressure with some blitzes on Bo Nix. But it looks like the defense is maybe the thing that is going to be the more inconsistent part week to week, and it's totally based on personnel. Because in week one, they had a really good marriage of brilliant play calling and scheme with the players actually executing it, and you could see play to play, like they just had Miami totally lost, and they didn't have the horses, no pun intended, to really do that last week. I think with no Laiatu Latu, it's very worrisome with no pass rush. Now, obviously, Cam Ward's been sacked 11 times. I think we're going to find out for real, you know, even if Latu plays, if you take him out of the equation, what happens outside of him, if they're going to have a survivable pass rush or if they're going to have to rely on blitzes a bunch this year. But otherwise, on the offensive side of the ball, the Colts have had over 400 yards of offense both games. They're averaging over 30 points a game. Daniel Jones has had a passer rating over 100. He's throwing really efficiently. His YPA has been north of 9.5 both games, but he's literally testing all levels of the field. Like with the Giants, he got the bad rap for not throwing downfield more. And I've irritated him a time or two asking him about that because he will push back on that and say that he does so. But he's legit throwing the ball down the field now. So you got to see if the other shoe is going to drop with Jones, and if the defense can kind of pick themselves back up from a game where they almost weren't able to hold on last week.
Yeah, I mean, his ADOT is like 8.8 right now, something like that. Now, what I will say is, looking at some of the numbers, 36% of his dropbacks have come off play action. That obviously pairs with the run game well. Would you say that he is really taking advantage of the space that the run game's creating?
Yeah, because Jonathan Taylor is doing a really good job right now, obviously leading the league in rushing at the moment. But no, they've done a lot of play action, and I think that is a good way for them to do this moving forward because they're giving him the options to just do real quick read stuff, get rid of the ball quickly, and that's kind of how they're creating some of their big plays. You know, Alec Pierce has had a couple big plays downfield. They've been able to attack, you know, kind of the thing where there's a letdown play by the defense, and then offensively you need to go for the go ball right after that. They've been able to do that with play action. So I imagine that's going to be a staple of this team. Just anything to give the defense any sort of microsecond of hesitation. They're going to do a lot of misdirection stuff, RPOs, a lot of the play action because they can with Jonathan Taylor. which is a really refreshing thing to see because you wondered how it was going to affect Jonathan Taylor not having Anthony Richardson back there because
Right.
defenses did not know what to do against both of them. Now they've got a little more of a classic style quarterback, even though Jones can move around a bit.
Yeah.
But very much more so a classic pocket passer type. But so far, it's been good. It's really been the offensive line that's stepped up tremendously that has made this all possible because Jones is making a lot of really good reads and everything. But if he was getting constantly pressured, it wouldn't work. And they faced Miami and Denver, two super aggressive defensive fronts, and it's been working.
Yeah, and that is something that we'll continue to talk about throughout the show because I think the Titans are maybe not on the level of the Denver Broncos front. That could create some problems. But on the Titans side of things, I'm focusing on offense too because the Titans defense has had good moments. They forced the 3 turnovers against the Broncos. They hold the Rams to 10 points and get an interception in the first half of last week's game. But the Titans offense, tell me if you've heard this before, fans of either team. The Titans offense is just ugly out there. Right now, they're 32nd in points, 32nd in yards. Like, it can't get going. And you wonder the Titans have put so much into their offensive line. 2 first-round picks, 3 big-time veteran contracts, including Dan Moore and Lloyd Cushenberry, which were top of the market contracts for their respective positions when the Titans handed those out in free agency. You draft wide receivers. You have Calvin Ridley. Tony Pollard's not a Jonathan Taylor level running back, but he's not a terrible running back. He's more of a middle-of-the-road starting running back in the NFL. And Cam Ward has been, regardless of what, stats you could pull up and this and that, Cam Ward has been a massive improvement through the first 2 weeks at the quarterback position from, Will Levis throwing games away last year for the Titans in the first 2 weeks. But it's resulted in worse offensive numbers than what the Titans had last year. And it's kind of perplexing. At some point in time, you do have to worry about coaching. And for me, if you look at the big storyline for the Titans, it's if they don't win this game, and they drop to 0-3, and then they have a 3-game road trip where they have to go to Houston, they have to go to Vegas, they have to go to Arizona, 3 straight games. The Titans are staring down the barrel of 0-6 going into a Week 7 home game against Mike Vrabel's Patriots. So I think, and I identified this game before the season. Look, I didn't think that the Colts would have a great year. I picked the Colts to finish last in the division. That doesn't look like it's going to be true, but I also am not going to go as far as to say that the Colts are going to be one of the best teams in the AFC this year. I'm not convinced, and maybe they are, and maybe that happens. They go 10-7, 11-6, 12-5, and are one of the best teams in the AFC. Maybe I'm just wrong, but I'm still looking at this game like I did before the year, like this might be the only chance the Titans have to get a win because division games are always closer than normal. They're at home in this game, and I think if they don't win this game, Brian Callahan will be fired within the next 6 weeks. So this is huge for the Titans. How much faith do you think people in Indianapolis have in the team now after it seemed like Colts fans were just in doomsday mode before the season because A-Rich got benched, but it seems like that has flipped entirely now, right?
No, yeah, they're riding the high right now for sure. I think there is still a little bit of healthy skepticism because again, we're not used to this. Like for the last several years, since Andrew Luck was healthy and balling, really, I guess since you can't even say 2018 because they started out slow that year. It's been a long time since the Colts have been able to get this fired up early in the year. Yeah. So there is a little bit of like, okay, what's the reality of this? But just enjoying the ride at the moment. But as far as this game with the Titans, I think obviously everyone feels pretty confident.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that defense for Tennessee seems like a real thing. And yes, the Colts have swept the Titans the last couple of years, but those games have mostly been close. Yes. Even the late season game last year when the Colts had a healthy command of it, they allowed Tennessee to get right back into it. Mm-hmm. I think there's been 1 or 2 overtime games in these last couple of years, so it's been very, very close. And when it comes to Tennessee, in like the offensive side of the ball, like you mentioned, does it feel like they're more trying to figure out what they are? Like Callahan knowing Cam Ward can handle a lot, so he's trying to figure it out, or is it they're just totally overmatched by the defenses that they faced?
Quite frankly, I think they've been totally overmatched by the defenses that they face. The Broncos defense is excellent. The Rams defense is excellent. And I'll be honest with you, I think there is a coaching problem here. I think at this time, it's only fair to say Brian Callahan is not cut out to be an NFL head coach. And that's been the biggest issue because in that first game against the Broncos, honestly, it was coaching decisions and mismanagement of the game that lost the Titans that game. It's almost squarely on Brian Callahan. Last week, they were a bit overmatched by the Rams, and it's mostly been up front with the offensive line, which has probably been the biggest disappointment so far. But speaking of the offensive line, I will say one of the advantages I think the Titans may have in this game is the Colts pass rush is not on the level of the Denver Broncos and the Los Angeles Rams, and it may allow the Titans to find some stability on offense that we haven't seen through the first 2 weeks, but that's a big matchup that we're going to be talking about here as Crossover Thursday continues. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. That's why they have more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. Whether it's footwork or breath work, we know that athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Nappa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from the smooth handling to the intuitive control, and with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. I drive a Mazda. Recently had to go to a little bachelor party at a cabin way up a hill with a gravel road, and Mazda's CX-5 handled it absolutely beautifully. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love the most is how portable they are. It's a big taste in a tiny shot, and you could take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Guys, throughout the beginning of the week, I'm breaking down tape. I'm staying up late to cover primetime games for Locked On NFL, and 5 Hour Energy is exactly what I need to keep that energy high that you guys know I'm bringing and to get the job done. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites that you love and be bold and try something new with in-store and online options at www.5hourenergy.com or check out Amazon today. All right, Jake, let's continue today's Crossover Thursday, Week 3, Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts. I know the Colts and Titans are going in different directions, but these division matchups always seem to be close. We're going to talk about the matchups that will decide this game. And Jake, I'm going to kick us off here and continue on where we just were. I think the Tennessee Titans offensive line has been the biggest disappointment for the Titans so far. You're right, 11 sacks. I would say it's actually 10 sacks because one of those sacks was Cam Ward scrambling and he steps out of bounds 2 yards short of the sticks. Rather than just that always blows my mind when quarterbacks do that. You're right there. You can see the line of scrimmage. You're right out of bounds. Just flip the ball out of bounds instead of giving a sack to your offensive line. So I'd say really it's 10 sacks in 2 games, but that doesn't make it better. 10 sacks in 2 games is pretty terrible, but I think some of those are a young quarterback needing to get the ball out of his hands quicker. And then, of course, some of those are the offensive tackle play. J.C. Latham, the Titans' first-round pick from 2024, missed last week, and John Ojukwu, who's been with the Titans for a few years, practice squad-level guy who's kind of floated around the end of the roster. He was in there. Dan Moore, the big free agent tackle that the Titans signed, he's given up some sacks and stuff like that. But again, we're talking about the Denver Broncos, who led the NFL in sacks last year with 64. We're talking about the Los Angeles Rams, which have some great players on that defensive front, and I think will be a top 5 defensive front this season. And, I'm not trying to be overly critical of the Colts here. They've been good this year, but you look at the facts here, the Colts had 5 pressures last week against the Broncos. Jeffrey Simmons had 7 against the Broncos by himself. You know what I mean? So I think it's fair to say that the big weakness of this Colts team is that pass rush unit. And DeForest Buckner is a fantastic player, no doubt about it. Latu, obviously a good player. Kwity Paye is maybe not lived up to his draft stock, but isn't a bad player per se. But I think the Tennessee Titans offensive line has a chance to really bounce back in this game and limit the pressure because the quality of the opponent will go down. And also the Titans started getting the run game going against the Rams. They rushed for over 4 yards per carry, 92 yards for Tony Pollard. I think that the Tennessee Titans offensive line has been a disappointment, but they were one position group that every Titans fan was looking at before the year saying, okay, the O-line should be better. The O-line should be better this year. And while that hasn't proven to be true through 2 weeks, I think that the Titans offensive line is better than last year. I think they can have a massively improved performance against the Colts defensive front, not only in pass protection, but also in the run game. And that's one matchup where if the Titans are able to be much better on the offensive line against a lesser pass rush, then that will give Cam Ward time. That'll open up the run game. And I think the Titans offense could have a major bounce back performance if the offensive line handles business.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a major opportunity for Tennessee's line to kind of get right in this one.
Right.
It's not going to be much of a relief because the guys they do have they've got a lot of power and they're hard to deal with, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get to the quarterback.
Right.
Samson Ebukam is a violent rusher. Same with Tyquan Lewis. Kwity Paye is very stout and strong. Those guys just aren't going to bend the edge. They're not the real flexible athletic types. That's where Latu comes in. We don't know if he's going to go. So last week in
What's
practice,
he dealing with right now, if you don't mind? Sorry.
Yeah, hamstring. So last Wednesday, he had the hamstring injury in practice. So he was limited, didn't practice Thursday or Friday. And with hamstrings, you could be back in a week. You could be back in 4 weeks. You just really don't know. So here in a couple hours, we'll ask Shane Steichen, is he going to practice today? And we'll see. But yeah, that's going to be big. And we're going to find out from the Colts perspective, is the pass rush really in trouble or not?
Yeah.
Because
it's an answer game for both. I think this is the Titans offensive line actually as bad as they've looked in the first 2 weeks? Because if they struggle in this matchup, then the answer is yes. And then, is the Colts pass rush as bad as the numbers say it is early? If they struggle with the Titans offensive line, then that answer is probably yes. Yeah,
because the Titans front is not going to be going up against the Rams and the Broncos this week, not by any stretch of the imagination. You mentioned DeForest Buckner. He's always going to show up. He's always going to have, at least a couple pressures. But last week you mentioned 5 pressures against Bo Nix. They were all hurries. They didn't even hit him. It was not very productive. So we definitely need to see what is going to become of that, whether or not Latu is there. But that also spills into the run game as well, because the Colts are, in these couple games, it's been about 5 yards a carry right around for both teams. Neither team has just been able to be in the spot where they can really commit to the run throughout a game. Now, the Colts were killing the Dolphins in week 1, and then the Broncos were having a lot of success with all those crossers and all the shallow stuff against the Colts. So that's where they were really leaning into it. But I mean, Pollard can do a couple things now. Now for the Colts, Tyjae Spears always seems to be the one that is the huge thorn in their side. But Pollard can do some things now. So I think if the Colts defensive front can't get off their blocks, and if the linebackers can't, get to their run fits and everything, it could be a problem. They're not really undisciplined. They don't miss a ton of tackles, but the problem so far has been just getting off blocks in time. It is the biggest thing that I have noticed. So yeah, you need Latu back so that everyone can kind of play in the roles they're supposed to. I think Charvarius Ward will help because that's a guy at the cornerback position on the boundary that's willing to mix it up and can tackle. He's a tough guy there as well. I hope so. It's hard to say because he's got a concussion. He didn't practice at all last week. You hope to see him at least in a limited fashion today, so he can ramp it up in time to play. But yeah, he didn't leave the Dolphins game with the concussion, but he reported symptoms to them the Monday after. So again, just like hamstrings, you never know with concussions either. So yeah, they need these guys back because they do contribute so heavily in different areas. But another area I was wanting to kind of dig into is the Colts passing game. So Michael Pittman Jr. is kind of back as the guy, as the receiver. He dealt with the back issue last year in the game where they won in Tennessee. They were talking about him going on IR just that week.
I
And
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
He's
think he
going
caught,
on IR. The back is bad. And then he went
yeah,
out there and catches the game-winning touchdown and crushes the Titans. It's
I'd say
classic Titans experience.
put Snead on IR essentially. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how that'll go. Is Snead back and working and he's doing his
Well,
thing?
that's a little up and down. Snead is
Uh-huh.
back. He played his first full game since that injury last year. He looked a little sluggish in the second half against Davante Adams and kind of got rolled. But in the first half, he looked excellent against Davante Adams. So it's kind of a tale of two halves for Snead. So we'll see if his stamina improves in this one.
Gotcha. Okay. And another one. So when the Colts are facing the Titans for years now, I've had my eyes locked on Amani Hooker. Like, I think he's just one of the best X factors in the game of football on defense. Like, he is so underappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Is he the first guy that's going to be able to kind of put the brakes on Tyler Warren for the Colts? Because Warren, it's looking like the pass game runs through him.
Yeah.
He is someone that defenses cannot handle so far. Even if he's catching a shallow ball, he's stopping on a dime and cutting back inside to create 10, 15 more yards after the catch. So I think a guy like Amani Hooker could really be someone to stand out for Tennessee's defense. We'll see. I just think he's definitely the type of player I would definitely have pause about if I was the Colts.
Yeah, no, perfectly good answer. Amani Hooker, especially, they roll him down in those zones and have him kind of match up with those tight ends over the middle. That's going to be huge. And let me just say before we go to our final segment, the Chicago Bears are just absolute idiots taking Loveland over Warren. What are you guys doing, letting Warren go to the Colts? The incompetence of other organizations helping the Titans deal with more difficult situations. I just can't stand it. But with that in mind, we do got to talk about what will decide this game ultimately. And I think that it may be which team is able to run the ball and then stop the run as well. Do want to let you guys know that this Crossover Thursday is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can get your shot to take home real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. Look, you guys love getting in the comments and telling Jake and I how wrong we are and how right you are all the time. Well, prove it on PrizePicks. And you're going to get some max discounts every week. Like this week, you can get Patrick Mahomes more or less than half a passing yard. I mean, they're basically giving you a free win to start your lineup. So make sure that you download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. It's PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, Jake, let's cap off today's Week 3 Crossover Thursday. One of 2 that we'll be doing this year in a division crossover. But we've talked about the big storylines. We've talked about some matchups that we're looking for. Now we need to talk about what ultimately will decide this game. And, Jake, I got to tell you, I think it's the run game. I think for both teams, that's what it boils down to. The Colts have run all over the Titans recently. The Titans have held up strong against the run early in games, but their competitive stamina has dropped late in games. And I think it gets tougher for the Titans defense in the second half because the Titans offense falls off a cliff. And now you're out there more, longer drives, less breaks and all of that. But with Daniel Jones being so good in play action so far this year and Tyler Warren being such a valuable threat over the middle of the field, if the Colts are able to run the ball with success early in the game, that's only going to open up that play action more. It's going to bite the linebackers in. It's going to bring the safeties down. Warren's going to have more space over the middle. So I think if the Titans don't stop the run for the Colts, they're letting the game be on easy mode for Daniel Jones. I think if you're the Titans, you want to make Daniel Jones beat you with precision. You want to make him slice and dice you, long drives, consistent execution, and see if he makes a mistake, which he has in his career. He hasn't in the first couple of weeks with the Colts, but throughout his career, he has made mistakes if you give him too many opportunities. But you're not going to be able to do that if you don't stop the run and set up 3rd and long and 3rd and medium situations. And then likewise with the Titans offense, they had a ton of success in play action opportunities last week, even though Brian Callahan only called it 19%. Why are we only running 19% play action when you're you're having so much success with it. I don't know. Doesn't make sense. But if the Titans don't run the ball and set themselves up, and the Titans so far, Jake, have had the longest third down yards to gain of any team in the NFL. Like, their third downs are harder and more difficult. And when you have a rookie quarterback and you maybe don't have the most dynamic wide receiver group of all time, and you have an offensive line that's struggling, all that, long third downs is just the worst thing that you could possibly hear. So for me, everything about this game is the run game, whether it's Titans defense, Titans offense, doesn't matter. The run game is everything.
Yeah, no, getting ahead of the sticks would be huge. From the Colts perspective, I just got a big red circle over Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren. Those are two guys that just do so much. They're creating all their own plays. Now, the offensive line is doing their part, of course, but Jonathan Taylor has become a true 3-down back. Like, we all know him as this workhorse running back, but he's catching the ball really well this year, and he has stepped up big time in pass protection. So he's kind of created a need for him to never leave the field. And that's a guy who is one of the most explosive players in football, never has to go off the field now. So he's been huge. Tyler Warren, I mentioned, he could take these 3-4 yard catches and add a bunch more yardage to him. He's getting downfield. He's hitting those corner routes, had that beautiful sail route out of the backfield that I'm sure we all saw by now last week. So Warren and Taylor have been, I think, the biggest X factors and creators for this offense so far. And the offensive line's got to hold up, obviously. Jeffrey Simmons versus Quentin Nelson is always must-see TV.
Prime time. Yeah.
Everyone loves that matchup. I'm sure those two guys absolutely hate each other, but we all are better as football fans for getting to see it. So that's huge. And then the pass rush. It would be really beneficial for the Colts if they were not the get-right game for Tennessee's protection and their offensive line. I don't know what the injuries are going to look like. Two of the three most important defenders for the Colts were out last week, and you got to hope at least one of them is back because, Cam Ward is a creator. They had their hands full last week with Bo Nix, who I think is someone who's somewhat similar. He's not just a distributor. He's able to escape pressure, roll out, get out of the pocket, and do some unique things to keep the play alive. And I think Cam Ward is the exact same way. And I think he's a little more willing to sit back there and hold on to the ball until something develops, which I'm sure gets him in trouble from time to time. But yeah, the Colts cannot just have 5 pressures and no hits in this game. Like, one of the big reasons teams are having success against Tennessee is creating chaos for Ward in the backfield. So the Colts have to be part of that as well. I think it was probably good for Lou Anarumo to see a game like last week already in the season, so he can kind of adjust accordingly. You don't want Xavier Howard to necessarily be your top cornerback. I thought if it was going to continue rolling downhill like that, we might see more of Jonathan Edwards, who's a rookie undrafted free agent. But at the time, that's how bad it was for Howard. I think if I remember correctly, it was like 8 of 8 targets. He had 3 penalties. It was a genuinely horrid performance. And so is a rookie undrafted free agent really going to give you much worse than that? So if Howard keeps rolling downhill, I would hope they maybe bring someone else in to stop the bleeding a little bit. So I want to see some defensive adjustments, and I really want to see Taylor and Warren leading the offense again.
Yeah, just to add some numbers to what you're saying, the Titans gave up 28 pressures to the Broncos in week 1 and then 23 pressures to the Los Angeles Rams. So Colts fans, if you don't get more than 5 pressures, it definitely gives you your answer about the pass rush. The last thing I got to say is the penalties for the Titans. The Titans are last in the NFL right now in penalties. They've had 28 flags thrown on them, 23 of them accepted. 9 have been pre-snap penalties from the offensive line just not being locked in. They've given up a net negative 119 yards. They have lost 119 yards to their opponents through penalties. That's the most in the league by 20 yards. So if the Titans go out there and have another double-digit penalty game at home, they're 100% going to lose. And once again, all eyes on Brian Callahan because, in my opinion, you could go through each individual penalty and subscribe it to the player, but once the pattern has been established, then it becomes a coaching problem that all over the roster guys can't fix that. So those are the things that we're going to be looking for. Great matchup. Make sure you get your game previews from Locked On Titans and Locked On Colts on our shows tomorrow. But that's going to do it for us, folks. For Tyler Rowland, host of Locked On Titans, Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Crossover Thursday.